What happens when two ancient traditions meet, intertwining their values, practices, and identities? In the heart of modern America, a unique phenomenon has emerged: the JewBu. A JewBu is not simply a Buddhist or a Jew, it is an individual who carries both identities, blending the mindfulness of Buddhism with the cultural heritage of Judaism. In a world where rigid religions' boundaries are increasingly fluid, the JewBu represents a fascinating intersection. It's a story of spiritual seeking, of questions about identity, and of navigating the complexities of belonging to two distinct traditions. For some, it's about reconciling the teachings of the Buddha with the values of Judaism. For others, it's a journey of finding balance between their inherited and chosen paths. The roots of the JewBu identity are deeply tied to history. For many Jews, the trauma of the Holocaust prompted a search for meaning beyond traditional frameworks. Buddhist teachings on suffering and resilience resonated deeply, offering a spiritual pathway to process collective pain. In the 1960s and 70s, the countercultural movement brought Eastern philosophies to the forefront of American consciousness. Figures like Allen Ginsberg, a pioneer of this dual identity, blended Buddhist mindfulness with Jewish values. The Dalai Lama's historic meeting with rabbis in the 1980s further cemented this dialogue, exploring how these two ancient traditions could learn from one another. But what draws Jewish individuals to Buddhism today? Is it the mindfulness practices that emphasize presence and self awareness? Is it the perceived universality of Buddhist teachings? Or is it an antidote to parts of Judaism they find rigid or overwhelming? For many Jews, the answer lies in the balance, finding spiritual growth in the complementary aspects of both traditions while navigating the challenges of dual identity. Can you remain fully Jewish and still embrace the path of the Buddha? In the digital age, the JewBu phenomenon has taken on new dimensions. Apps and online platforms have become essential tools for practicing mindfulness and meditation, breaking down barriers between traditions. Virtual sanghas, digital Buddhist communities, offer spaces for reflection and connection, while Jewish mindfulness programs integrate meditation into the fabric of modern Jewish life. To understand the JewBu experience, we turn to those living at this unique intersection. Their stories reveal how ancient traditions blend with modern spirituality and how digital tools shape faith today. We spoke with Jewish individuals from diverse backgrounds, some embodying this dual identity unconsciously, and others simply identifying as only Jewish. Their reflections explore the blending of traditions, the challenges of dual identities, and the impact of technology on their spiritual paths. You can tell me your name and where you're from.
My name is Nurit Friedman, and I'm from Mexico, but I live in Miami.
Have you ever explored spiritual practices or ideas outside of Judaism?
I should engage in more. I always wanted to try meditation because it's harder for me to quiet my mind. I do engage in mindfulness practice more like being aware, like being in the present, being thankful, being like mindful of my actions in that way, but more informally, nothing formal.
Have you ever heard of the term JewBu?
Never,
Never?
never.
Okay, so it refers to Jews who engage with Buddhist teachings or practices.
I mean, I actually know a lot of people who embrace both things, but I didn't know it was like a thing or a term.
It's a JewBu. So now you know.
I
in
like
the
that,
future.
JewBu.
Yeah.
JewBu boo boo.
Yeah. So do you think, thinking outside the box here, do you think there's a natural connection between Judaism and Buddhists?
I mean, I can see for people who still want to embrace their Judaism, for whom their Judaism is important, but they want to lead a spiritual life that it's not necessarily 100% tied to going to temple, but it's more like a personal connection with God or a higher entity. I think it makes sense.
Do you think it's possible to maintain a dual identity, such as being Jewish and embracing elements of Buddhism?
I do. I've never thought of it as like a combined thing, but I think there's a lot of things that could be integrated, especially if you consider your Judaism not necessarily part of like religiosity, but more like spirituality. I think you can definitely combine elements.
Have you ever tried mindfulness or meditation apps? It could be either Headspace or
Never,
Calm. Never.
never.
Would you be open to try them?
Maybe.
Do you think technology has changed how people connect with religion or their spiritual identity in general?
I think so, in a good and in a bad way. So I think both. So I
Yeah.
think in a good way because you have access to maybe information that you didn't know existed. You have access to people, to knowledge, right? To, like you said, like apps that teach you how to do things that maybe in the past you couldn't or you didn't know you had access to. In a bad way, that is also disconnect you from, you could be connected through the internet but not with people. So you might lose those connections, but at the same time you could be connected to other forms and gain knowledge that otherwise you would not have access to.
Do you see now that you've been introduced to the concept of JewBus, do you see any parallels between Jewish traditions and practices like meditation or mindfulness? It could be like reflection, prayers, or even like different rituals.
I guess so. I mean, if you think about some of our holidays, if you think what like Yom Kippur is, right? It's a day of reflection. Like the days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, you're reflecting, you're ideally being mindful, you're being like grateful for what you have. You want to be in touch with, this like internal part. So the same thing with Shabbat. Like I don't keep Shabbat, but that's the whole point of Shabbat. If you have a day of connection, of again gratefulness. So definitely I can see some parallels if you think in more, again, not the religious part but more the spiritual part.
I am Hilda Weisberg. I was born in Mexico.
Migrated to America, right? Like 15 years ago from
Yes,
Mexico.
yes, more or less, yes.
Have you explored any spiritual practices or ideas outside of Judaism?
Yes, I love this part of Buddhism that they practice meditation. I love also yoga. Make me more peaceful in my inside and more connected with me. And that's part of my self development. I love it. I love it, and I can be with that very comfort in my life.
Have you ever heard of the term JewBu?
For me, it's the first time that I hear
You
that
hear that?
word.
If I tell you that JewBu, it refers to Jews who engage with Buddhist teachings and practices, and you yourself practice meditation, mindfulness, and yoga, would you maybe be open to considering yourself a JewBu?
I think I have to learn more about that because I love to meditate. I love to get to yoga and mindfulness also. I practice in my profession therapy. So everything helps me in a way that is your body, your mind, your feelings, and your spiritual way that to be a person, what kind of person you want to be. And this holistic view, I love it.
How do you balance this like double, not identities in your case, but how do you balance these both types of spirituality?
I think there are ways that each one can complement.
And how does a Friday look like you for you on a
It,
normal week? A Friday.
it's very interesting because in the morning I make my exercise, my yoga, and I meditate. And that's part of my every morning day. And Friday evening, we make Shabbat.
Candles.
We light the candles, and I love that way that you go in yourself also, because I don't read exactly the book, but in my own way, I ask for a peaceful week for everybody in the world to be my family and the world in peace.
Talk to me a little bit about what similarities you see between Judaism and Buddhist in their teachings or practices.
I think both have this similarity to give you balance. They are
Complement each
parallel,
other.
yes, and they complement each other. That's the word, exactamente.
Can you give me an example?
When it's the end of Shabbat, the peaceful in my heart that I feel in myself, it goes also when I finish work of yoga or meditation in the morning. It don't goes, they don't go against, they
Each
go
other.
parallel, and they
Okay.
help you. Everything helps you. It's wonderful. So maybe I am a JewBu.
Maybe. Yeah. Would you be open to considering yourself a JewBu?
I think so, yes.
Perfect.
Yes, I love this spiritual practice. And I love the being spiritual because it has meaning in life.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The JewBu phenomenon raises profound questions about the nature of identity in a globalized digital world. Can one truly belong to two spiritual traditions, or is the JewBu identity a reflection of something larger, our collective yearning to transcend boundaries and embrace unity? As seen in the interviews, Nurit reflects on how a spiritual Jew who follows Buddhist practices or teachings might be more likely to identify as a JewBu. Meanwhile, Hilda, through our conversation, begins to realize that as a spiritual Jew already engaging with Buddhist practices, she might now start identifying as one herself. This invites us to ask, are spiritual Jews, who are not strictly bound by religious adherence, more open to discovering other spiritual practices? Or does religiosity inherently limit one's willingness to look beyond Judaism? This would be a very interesting exploration for next time. But for now, as digital tools continue to shape how we connect with our spirituality, the JewBu identity offers a powerful lens to explore what it means to be both rooted and expansive, honoring the past while embracing the future. What can we learn from the JewBu? Perhaps that in embracing duality, we find wholeness.